Welcome back to the Dementia Collective, the podcast where we explore powerful stories and fresh ideas shaping the future of dementia care. If you're new here, my name is Andrew Karesa. I'm a caregiver, researcher, and the founder of BlueBell Village. I created this space because I know firsthand what it's like to walk the dementia caregiving journey. I know what it feels like when you're lost, overwhelmed, alone, but I also know the strength that comes from connection. Each episode, we dive into the people's tools and innovations that are helping caregivers find their footing and their voice. Our mission? To make dementia care more personal, more connected, and more grounded in Indigenous ways of knowing. The importance is ensuring that every caregiver feels seen, heard, and supported. Today, we have the pleasure of being joined all the way from Pittsburgh by Rachael Wonderlin, founder of Dementia By. So Rachael is an internationally recognized dementia care expert and educator. She has a master's degree in gerontology and is a Johns Hopkins University Press 3 times published author. Her books are Creative Engagement, a handbook of activities for people with dementia, The Caregiver's Guide to Memory Care in Dementia Communities, and Words to Say and Things to Do When Someone you know is living in a dementia care community. Professionally, Rachael is the owner of Dementia By, a dementia care consulting firm and education company. Rachael is also working on her 4th book, a business memoir titled, I Can't Hustle Any Harder Than This.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rachael, for joining us. There's a lot we can talk about.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
So we have a Patreon account here, and we give the members of the village, the ones that are willing to support us, the opportunity to ask a question to our guests. So one of the questions that we were asked that I want to pass along to you is, my mother has Alzheimer's, and we are noticing that the care she is receiving in her facility, so I assume care facility, is inconsistent. She
Okay.
receives great care from some staff and not so great from others. How can families respectfully advocate for more consistent, dementia-friendly care?
That's a great question. Probably the easiest thing to do, first and foremost, is to go to the people who are in charge at the community and talk with them about your concerns. Probably what's happening is they're not all getting the right education. They're probably not getting training. Maybe they do some initial staff training and then they kind of like leave it at that. So I would say, talking to them about getting better training for the caregiving staff. And, if things don't improve and you're not happy, that's an opportunity to say, hey, look, we might need to consider a move. And hopefully this will kind of get them thinking about what to do next.
Do you think that there's any value in having that conversation then with maybe some of those people in the facility that aren't caring the way that you think should happen? Do you think there's any value in having that conversation with them, or is it possibly going to put a red flag then on your loved one?
Yeah, I wouldn't talk to the caregiving staff directly because just there's a chance you might not come off the right way. I think that's a big problem potentially.
Okay, so you're saying to go to the
Go to
community leader, whoever that is, and
yeah,
kind
if
of
they have a
voice your
dementia care
concerns.
director, go to them. They have executive director, administrator, whoever is like in charge. I would go to that person. Yeah.
Okay, and that way you can ensure anonymous approach. So as well.
Right. Yeah. You also don't want to get labeled as being like a difficult person. You don't want to get like, yeah, we don't want people being like, oh, so and so's daughter or son or spouse or whatever has been complaining about us.
Okay, no, that's fair. Thank you. Hopefully that helps
Mhm.
the patron there. So I always start the podcast to try and understand the origin story. So can you talk about the origin story of Rachael? How did you get into this space?
I have a master's in gerontology, study of aging. So I've always loved working with older adults. And, long story short, after I realized this and getting my master's in gerontology, I started a role as a dementia care director at a Brookdale building in North Carolina, where I was living at the time. And I loved it. I started a blog sharing stories about my residents each day because there were so many cool stories and things happening. So I was sharing like short stories called Dementia by Day. So the blog turned into my first book with Johns Hopkins. And by the time my first book was like 3-ish months from coming out, so it was like November of, it was like this time of year in 2016, I got laid off. Um, I got laid off from the third building I was working in. At this time, I was working up here in Pennsylvania where I live now. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to start my own company. And I was pretty young. I was only 27, 26, 27 years old. And so I had, a lot of room to kind of experiment and, not a lot, not a lot on the line. I had a couple cats. That's what I had. So no one's like really depending on me. So I was like, okay, let me try to start my company. And so I grew my blog and my book. And essentially it was like, okay, I'm going to start a consulting firm.
Did you have any family history going into this to enter into dementia care?
Not really. My maternal grandmother died from a occipital glioblastoma. So at some point in that disease process, it begins to, kind of look like a dementia and could be considered a dementia, but not like traditional type of thing. Yeah.
So what led you into gerontology?
I've just always loved working with older adults, honestly. I just always loved working with older adults. I took a class called Psych of Aging in college, and I really liked it. Guess my light's done.
That's fair. Yeah, I would agree with you that way. My favorite thing about working with seniors is the stories and the wisdom
Mhm.
you can get. There's
Yeah.
always something you can take away, right, of
Yeah.
wisdom. The stories, I think, is an interesting one of all these seniors. They've always met somebody who knows somebody, and you always have this interesting, I grew up with this person, or this person did this thing. It's like, huh, you never
Yeah.
know who you know, right? I mean, they've got
Right.
70, 80, 90, whatever years of the 6 degrees of separation, right?
For sure.
So was there any one or any experience that you went through early on in your days as a dementia care director that really changed how you approach dementia care going forward, or kind of shifted the paradigm of what dementia care is or should be?
Yeah, I mean a lot of things, honestly. I learned the same stuff that everybody learned, which was just like redirect, distract, validate. And applying that, I found to actually be difficult. And one of my residents had asked me where her mom was, and I did what I was taught to do, which was like the validation method, and to say, "Oh, sounds like you miss your mom." And she said, "Yeah, why does no one around here ever answer my questions?" And I thought, huh, yeah, she's right. I didn't answer her question. I just dodged it because it made me uncomfortable. And so that's really where I started thinking about, is there a better way to do this? And that's really where I came up with my concept of embracing their reality, my trademarked phrase, and figuring out ways to do what's true for the person living with dementia instead of just, trying to avoid their question or, validate or redirect or distract them instead of actually dealing with the real thing that they're asking you.
So in that example you gave in that circumstance, how would you recommend approaching it? Because I mean, that's something that we hear a lot. I mean,
Mhm.
we've heard that say, I said to my family. So how would you use this embrace their reality to address that problem?
So we always tell people to say, where do you think they are? Where do you think she is? Where do you think he is? And then agreeing with their reality. We actually just recently released a web comic about embracing their reality. It has, as of this morning, 272,000 likes. That has over 10 million views on Instagram. And so it really resonated with people, and it's depicting this concept of saying, where do you think your loved one is? Okay, great, let's do that. Because it is kind of a novel thing for people. I was just at a conference yesterday, no, 2 days ago, Saturday. I was at a conference and explained, this a few times there, and yeah, it really resonates with people because it's not the same kind of lame advice that they've been hearing for years, which is just to be like, "Oh, sounds like you're sad." Like, what's anybody supposed to do with that? There's
Hmm.
just like that's just that advice is kind of. I just feel like we could do better. Like we could actually have a conversation with someone living with a cognitive impairment and find out where their reality is and do what's true for them. And that's the key. So finding out what's true for that person and then saying yes to whatever that is.
What about if it is a reality that like not a realistic thing that they've been through? So, um, let's say that the person grew up in Pittsburgh, but they are talking about their life growing up in Hawaii, but you're like, you in reality, they've never been to Hawaii, but they're talking about growing up on the ocean and surfing, all these kind of things. How would you approach it in that dynamic?
Same way, if that's their truth, then that's their truth. There's no reason to be like, no, that's not real. Right? You're just going to say, okay, whatever's true for you is true for you. And if what's true for them is traumatic, then you want to be a shoulder to cry on, not deny on, right? You don't want to deny their reality just because, whatever they're experiencing is not real or for you or is traumatic or what have you. And just being able to embrace that, embrace their truth as your truth as well.
So shifting essentially the paradigm of care, or what sort of impact would you have seen in communities by when they've applied this model?
Massive. I mean, I've had so many people who are both professional caregivers and also family caregivers say to me, this was the piece that I was missing. This was the piece that, I had never heard explained in this way. And so some people have come to me and said, I was kind of already doing this, but I didn't have a name for it. And so I felt bad about it because I felt like I was lying to somebody with dementia and I felt like I was doing it wrong, or I had other people telling me I was doing it wrong because I was lying. And so being able to explain it as, no, you're not lying. You're finding out what's true for this person and choosing their truth, I think is really digestible for people. Much more than just being like, oh, just tell a white lie or never lie. And both of these things are really confusing and unappealing. So it's tough advice to follow.
Is there any other major advice or trademarked concepts that you've developed that you think families or caregivers in facilities or home care, wherever, should know that maybe we're overlooking or missing?
Timeline confusion is my other favorite trademarked phrase. This idea that, if your loved one has trouble, quote unquote, recognizing you, it's not that they don't know you. It's not that they don't love you. It's not that they don't really even recognize you. It's just that they can't place you on a timeline that makes sense to them. So if they are 80 but think they're 50, how is their adult child also 50? And so instead, they'd be looking for a much younger version of you, but the younger version of you doesn't exist anymore. And so going, okay, again, like, let's embrace their reality. Let's do what's true for them. If they think that I am somebody else, that's totally fine. I don't have to go in and be like, hey, it's Rachel, your daughter, and blah, 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 blah. Me going in and just saying it's Rachel is good enough. And not everybody living with dementia has trouble placing people on their timeline. But if they do, recognizing that, it's not that they don't care about their family, it's just that they can't place them on that nonlinear timeline.
An interesting one, Rachel, is for the person when they look in a mirror and they have a hard time connecting who that person is in the mirror as well. I've seen it firsthand. The person looks and says, they're communicating with this person in the mirror, but it's them communicating, but they don't associate that person in the mirror with themselves. They associate with some other person. They're disconnected with um, who they are, or how
Well,
they look.
yeah, they're looking for a younger version of themselves, and they look in the mirror and they see this 80-year-old person, and they're like, "Who's this?" Right? I mean, our faces and everything, our bodies and faces change over time, and so we don't look how we did when we were 18. We don't look how we did, So, like, that's something to, think about, right? Um,
So you co-founded the Dementia and Improv workshop, Agreeing to Remember. Can you talk about this idea? I mean, I don't typically associate and think through improv and dementia care. So can you talk about that?
yeah. So, I have a workshop called Agreeing to Remember, and it's a dementia care improv workshop where we teach people to use improv theater skills that we teach on stage to communicate with people living with dementia. And it's the technique of yes and just going with someone else's, you know, presentation of their reality is essentially what we're doing in dementia care as well. So we can teach the dementia care techniques through improv in a really unique, digestible way. And honestly, it's been a while since I've done that workshop, but I essentially gifted it to my old improv theater and told them like, you guys can have this intellectual property. Like you guys can work this if, you know, you get an opportunity to teach it again somewhere, you can do it. And if I can join. But there's a chance with like my job and, my family that I'm gonna be too busy. But when I get a chance to do it, it's really fun.
What was the catalyst for that? I mean, when you're explaining it, it makes sense that these two should be in the caregiving repertoire, being able to navigate any sort of, like you said, lived reality that they have. So how did you come up and said, this is what we need to create? Is this tool? Like,
I've been doing I've done improv for like 20 years and it just made sense. Like it just kind of came to me one day. I was like, you know what? There's a lot of overlap between dementia care and improv. And I wonder if I could like make that into a workshop. And I'm not the only person who's created a workshop like this. Like other people have done it as well, but no one to my knowledge has the amount of improv and dementia care experience I have. A lot of people who I think have started these either have like mostly improv experience or mostly dementia care experience, but I have decades of both. So, and my co-founder Chris, he's the same in terms of having both a wealth of experience in both pieces of this. So I think that's helpful as well, actually being able to really apply improv and really apply dementia care knowledge.
were there any specific moments or stories, or maybe an exercise that really change that you keep thinking about as you go into communities that really sticks with you, resonates?
You mean like for like in the improv side of things?
Yeah, yeah. So and maybe a person who was participating in the improv, they went through and they experienced something, and the way they talked about it, or the way they shifted their perspective or something.
I had a guy who he was an improviser, so he was a friend of ours, and he'd never met anybody with dementia before. And after going through our workshop, like 2 weeks later or something, he went to a doctor's appointment, and there was an older guy sitting in the waiting room with his daughter, and the daughter went up to, go to the bathroom or something. And the older guy said to my friend, "So good seeing you at Thanksgiving." And my friend realized the gentleman had dementia. And because he'd taken our workshop, was able to talk to him and was able to embrace his reality and was like, "Oh, yes, it was great. And like, we had so much good food." And he was able to talk. And so the daughter came back and told, my friend, "Thank you so much for talking to my dad. He has dementia." But it was because of the workshop that this guy knew what to do.
That's such a valuable skill,
Hmm.
that to be able to just go with whatever is coming, and not turn them away, turn them down, and cause some sort of issue down the road. If they have an outburst, or maybe they just feel bad, and we don't want to instigate that.
Hmm.
Hmm. Interesting. And when you were creating that, was that a um something that you guys were charged for people for, or was it a free
No, not
service that you provide?
No, not free. Yeah, it's a workshop, it's an improv workshop. So people would come sometimes, or like we did it a number of times that people would hire us to come and do the workshop for like a conference or something like that. Yeah.
Has there been any research done, Rachel, in that domain that you know of, that about the efficacy of that for caregivers?
Probably. It's sort of tough it's one of those things that's sort of more anecdotal than it is, I mean, it's like, it's tough to do research about this. I've had people also say, could you do some research on like how embracing their reality is working? And it's like, not really, because it's so hard to quantify and measure, I think, in that way, because it's more stories and experiential than it is like quantifiable, right?
It
Like
would
I
have to be
can,
qualitative
yeah,
research of what
yeah,
like
yeah. And so that's what
the
makes it
stories and
hard to
experience
like
are.
makes it hard to make it like to do like a hard, paper, like research paper on it. And it's also why my books, all of them are very story based. I share real stories about working with people living with dementia in each chapter because one, I think it's much easier to teach that way because people learn better through stories. And I don't know, it just makes it's a better read rather than reading like like a research paper, which are typically dull. So,
They're formatted that way. Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a overload of words and concepts and theories and jammed it together in a prescribed recipe of
Yeah.
that's
And for
not
people to be able
great for
to
not
sit
even close.
down and like get through a book, there has to be a hook, there has to be something that makes people want to keep reading the book. And I think stories do that, right? I mean, before humans had the ability, like before humans wrote things down, how do they share information with each other? They shared it through stories. They shared it through like tales, right? They shared it through and like so information has been passed down through like humankind from the beginning of
Hmm.
time through stories. And I think we connect much better and we learn better and we retain more when information is presented to us as a story and not just like here's a bunch of facts.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Hmm.
Do you only support care communities in the States?
No, we would work. I mean, so we've had a client years ago. I did a couple webinars for a group in South Africa. But and we've had Canadian companies who like take our courses and stuff, but I'd say like in terms of clients we work with for actual consulting, they've been all in the States. Now, I was in Hawaii 2 weeks ago, which feels like it's not the States because it's like a set of islands. It feels like it's a totally separate place, but it is technically still the US. So I was in Hawaii with a client. Yeah, we're in terms of like actual consulting clients, they've been in the US. We'd love to change that. It's just been what it's been. That said, I've been all over the US for work and to states that I would never probably have any reason to go to otherwise. So that's been nice that I've gotten to see a lot of things. I've been able to see a lot of places because I've gone there to visit dementia care communities, but I'm also there, I'll go and like see sightsee for an hour or something while I'm there.
Do you think that um, the American context creates a different culture in a community? In Canada, for example, a lot of these care facilities, the family pays a little bit, but the government pays a lot. Again, the public
Mhm.
healthcare system. Do you think that that changes the delivery of care because it's government funded, so it's limited amount of economic potential for the facilities. They can't just charge a bunch more money, make a bunch more. They're kind of limited on how they approach it.
Yeah.
So, what's your thoughts on that?
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure because they're the places that are like the nicest or at least look the nicest, are typically in socioeconomic areas of people who can afford, very expensive private pay facilities because the US is very much not based on any sort of like socialism when it comes to like money. What's interesting though is because like I've been all over the US, you can see why like the political arena here is so fraught and why it's like essentially impossible to like pass laws that apply to every state because it's so different. Like if you step out of a plane and you're in like Louisiana, the culture, the weather, the landscape, the people, everything is so different than if you were to step out of a plane in like Minnesota. You know, it's really wild. And you're like, how is this like the same because obviously there's a lot of overlapping things, but like there are so many different differences, especially between states that are like really far apart, have a completely different experience. So different, and different care communities have different licensures here by state. They have different state regs. They have different guidelines. And so there are things that I've learned like state to state where I'm like, okay, well, we had to lock everything up in this state, but we don't in the bathrooms in this state. And we're like one state over. Um, from like Mississippi to Louisiana. I can't remember which one's which, but one of them, you don't need to lock things up in the bathrooms, and the other one you do. And they're right there. Like, I went from one building to another building across state lines, and it's a different set of rules.
Yeah, it's always interesting to have that comparative lens, especially. So we have a place called like Lloydminster, and Lloydminster is a border city. So it's a city that is completely in the middle. You can hop between the borders. So half the city operates in one provincial health boundaries, education boundaries. The other one operates in the other. So you're still in the same city. So it's one mayor kind of works across both domains. You know, this weird perspective that people have to navigate.
Yeah.
When you look at all the communities you've been to, are there any common problems or things that families don't necessarily know that they should be aware of that happens behind the scenes?
I think that's true everywhere. I mean, we did those webinars for a group in South Africa, and they have the same problems that communities here have. And I think a lot of it comes down to like education of everybody, staff and families, about dementia and like how to communicate with people living with dementia. But it was just funny because I was like, okay, these are the same problems. You know, they have a completely different, they're halfway across the world, but they have the same challenges that we have.
So if you could change something immediately at all care facilities or communities to improve day-to-day care for people with dementia, what would that be?
I would ensure that everybody's properly educated, and with that, the care staff were paid more and paid what they were worth. Because when you pay people better, you can look for better candidates and you can retain people, you can train them better. So it would be both really those things. I think they're connected. I think like, if you're going to give people all this training, I think they have to be paid for their time and their energy.
Which makes a lot of sense. I mean, what I've seen so many times in hired care providers is they're supposed to support people with dementia, living with dementia, but they can't tell you the difference between frontal temporal or Alzheimer's. They assume that they're the same. And I'm like, they were hiring you. You should know this at a superficial level, if nothing else. So when you're walking into a home care community, what are signs that you look for to quickly say, this is a place that understands the need of someone with living dementia or not?
Looking to see if they have life stations set up, if they actually work. It's not just like pretty decor, but it's actually something residents can engage in. I'm looking to see is there a calendar posted somewhere? And if so, is it a decent calendar, or is there like nothing on it? Are there no times on it? What's going on? How are people being approached? Are residents just sitting like in chairs, like staring at the TV, or just like head droop down? You know, is there music? Right? I think that there's a lot you can survey in a very quick like scan, you know, in like just a couple minutes. You can kind of tell what it is.
So when you built Dementia by Day, were you, and specifically the school portion, were you hoping to change the way that these facilities can be designed and operate?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when we do our consulting, that's really where we're actually hands-on, you know, trying to help them build a better dementia care program. And then the education, of course, is just important to ensure that everybody's on the same page about dementia. But yeah, no, I mean, when we work with companies, we want to like leave them better than we found them. For sure.
What's your perspective of painting doors to look like bookshelves
Love a good
and those
bookshelf
sort of
door.
things?
Love a good bookshelf door, not painted, but rather like a decal, like a printed decal that's a realistic thing. I think the murals on doors don't really make any sense because sometimes people will paint like a waterfall. Well, a waterfall is not a stagnant thing. Like that doesn't make a sense and it wouldn't be inside. So I've done the bookshelf door as a wall, like a decal, like a car wrap decal, and put it on the door. And it has worked really well. Certain states, again, like certain states and certain counties within those states, like the fire marshal will put up a fight and will say, oh, you can't disguise an exit door. And it's like, well, we don't want people living with dementia exiting through this door. That's sort of the whole point. So there's that. But I think it's a really good thing for people who are really distracted by the door and they really want to leave. And people will say, oh, well, We just need to do a better job engaging them. And yes, like that and this other thing, because it's also preventative. Like I worked in a community that was not a secure environment. So I had residents who would like leave through the door, and it was a huge waste of everybody's time and energy because we would just spend all this time going and getting them. And I was like, we can't even engage these people because they're too busy leaving. So yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a problem.
Yes.
When you look at Dementia by Day school,
Hmm.
what is the typical objective you want people to walk away with if they sign up and do it?
So we have a bunch of different classes. So it kind of depends what class that you want to take. Our most, I'd say, our most popular class is the program director certification, and that's really for people running programming. I want them to be able to come out of that with real concrete knowledge that they can apply about how to engage people living with dementia, like life stations they can set up, the creativity boxes, the whole 9 yards. I want them to be able to be like, wow, I'm actually able to implement everything I learned in this class. I want their job to be easier, and I want their residents to be happier because I was a dementia care director 3 times over, and I didn't have any class like that. And I, at the time, was like, "Man, I wish there was a class like this," So I made it. I built the class that I wished that I had. I wrote the books that I wished that I had had at that time.
So they're not academic and theoretical in nature. They're practical stuff that is, able to help you in your day-to-day practice.
They're academic in the sense that, like, we spend some time talking about different causes of dementia and things like that, but most of the time is spent on like communication and how to, like, create programming and all these things, like actual stuff you'd actually use. Because I find that a lot of training is just like, what is dementia? And that's fine, but that's not going to help anybody really do their job any better. They're not a neurologist, they're not going to be making a diagnosis. They're going to be engaging with people. So, like, how do we improve that?
If someone is short on time or feels overloaded, how does these structured education programs, courses, deliverables make a difference for them in their delivery of care?
It's all stuff that you can start, stop, pause, and come back to, right? So they can watch like a video, they can listen to my voice, they can whatever, and learn as they go. It's not like they don't have to sit in a room, for 5 hours and get like trained by a train the trainer type methodology, which I think has a lot of disadvantages to it, namely time spent. So this is something, and it's something too that they can revisit. They can come back to it later, and be like, "What was that thing? What was that thing that Rachel was talking about?" And they can come back and they can watch it or listen to it.
Interesting. What is one idea or approach in dementia care that you wish more communities would be adopting in, say, the next decade?
Embracing their reality, right? And not just teaching the same old thing of like, sounds like you miss your mom, but where do you think she is? Right. And really going, okay, how do we do what's true for the person living with dementia, no matter where it is? And ideally linking it back to me, not just being like, I heard this somewhere, but being like, Rachael Wonderlin said this. Because we had that problem with my 16 things I'd want if I got dementia poem. I have a intellectual property attorney, and she spends, I don't know, a lot of time sending out cease and desist letters because people have just copied and pasted this thing without my name on it and with wrong information, like all over the internet. So yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, that must be I hadn't considered that. Must be a big piece because a lot of people in this space are like, I've come up with this or I figured out my care, so I'm just going to throw it out there. And but where
Yes.
did I pick it up from? Right, I might have heard
Right.
it a year ago and
Right.
start
Right.
recombining, reallocating, and not doing proper attribution. Okay, interesting.
Yes. Yeah. That's been a problem for sure, especially with the poem
Do you
attribution.
find it's larger in the, let's say, the dementia care influencer space than it is for caregivers or
No.
family people?
I think it's just the internet. I think like people see a thing online and they like don't understand how they don't understand slash don't care how intellectual property works. And so they see a copy pasted thing, and the vast majority of people will not take 10 seconds to Google it and see who wrote it, because if they Googled it and took 10 seconds, they would see that I wrote it. But instead, they just see it on Facebook and it's like and share. And it's like, yo, do not like and share because this doesn't have my freaking name on it. But people will just like and share it. And next thing you know, like someone will send it to me like, hey, Rachel, I saw your poem circulating Facebook again. And it's got like thousands of likes and tons of comments. And I'm thinking, oh man, it's so defeating to see that because typically they've added stuff to it and made it wrong. Like it's wrong. Some of the things they've added to my list. And if my name had been on it, people would have seen that and then maybe gone to my site and gotten more helpful resources because I have a ton of free resources. So they could have gotten like a lot more out of that than just like copy pasted some incorrect poem without my name.
So, what are some of the free resources you have, Rachel, on your website that folks can go access today?
We have every month we call it freebie of the month. We have a little one pager about something about dementia care. So we do that, a new one of those every single month. We also have some other free downloads. I have a blog, I have a YouTube channel, I have a podcast, I have a very busy Instagram. I have a Facebook group where people can ask questions. So there's a lot of opportunity, I think, to connect with us and to follow our stuff.
Is there something that you believed firmly in when you first started, say day one, program director one,
Mhm.
about dementia care, but you're since like, hold up, I was wrong, fundamentally wrong about this thing?
There's nothing like I'd say egregious, but probably the biggest thing that I've evolved on is life station stuff. And so in the beginning, I took from kind of what I'd learned, which was like how to build, certain life stations. And there are life stations that I'm like, this doesn't work. Like no one uses this, no one cares about this. The biggest example of which being like the workstation, like a workbench, and being like, this is for the guys. Give me a break. Like there's just nothing to do there, nothing to see here. Like there's nothing going on. And so I've been, converting people's workbenches into like a garden station because there's something to do there. So I'd say that's the biggest thing is going like, okay, like some of those early life stations were kind of crappy. Like some of those early life stations were just missing the point. And I was getting there, but I just wasn't fully like I had not fully reached my peak on how to really make those work in the beginning.
I find oftentimes that these care communities paint a singular cultural identity lens to their care. Do you have any advice on how they can ensure they're adapting and addressing the unique cultural need of residents?
The thing that's interesting about the US is that we like state to state, you have pretty similar people at the community for the most part. Like in Minnesota, everybody's going to look like me. Like a bunch of like I've never seen more people with blonde hair and blue eyes than I have like in Minnesota because a lot of like my like Scandinavian ancestors like settled in like Minnesota, North Dakota, like and stuff like that. And so you go to that area and you see like a lot of people of like certain European descent. And then you go to like Louisiana and you see, a completely different culture, right? You see a completely different culture, people who grew up in the bayou. It's like almost even like different languages. In Hawaii, primarily people are of Asian descent. So there's like when I was there are people, using chopsticks at meals. Residents are using chopsticks at meals. So culturally is interesting because I think it super depends where in the US, especially for the US, that you are because of that cultural adaptation. And then you go to like communities, in certain areas where people are predominantly Jewish. And so instead of like obsessing over Christmas, we're doing Hanukkah stuff. We're not singing, Christmas songs. Whereas I'd say in most of the US, like Christmas is the thing, the holiday. Yeah.
When you're navigating all these communities and all these individuals and organizations you're supporting, I assume it can be heavy and tough and weigh on you. So what keeps you motivated on the tough days to keep doing this?
When I get those great photos from my dementia care directors, or when somebody says to me, wow, this really helped me, to us on social media, or I get an email that's like, you just changed my life. Like you changed the course of my interactions with my loved one. Things like that are so that go really far, on those days where you're like, oh my God, like my clients aren't listening to me and no one's doing anything I want them to do. And like, this is working and this is working. But at this point in my life, in this point in my career, I've had many more wins than I've had, fails as a consultant and as, like as a business owner. So at this point, I have a lot of wins. I have a good solid base of like success that I don't get as distraught about the small things as I used to, because I know how to handle stuff.
So what would success look like for you now in this space?
I think having the clients that we have and having when we're doing their rollouts, like having their buildings or their franchises succeed in terms of like the residents or clients are generally happy, the families are generally happy, the staff's going through education, they're implementing the stuff we're telling them to implement. When we go and visit, things look good. All of that, really.
For caregivers listening, they may feel alone. They're like, where do I go? I don't know what to do. Where do you suggest that they start?
I would check out dementiabyday.com. Also, Instagram, if they're on Instagram, that's a great resource. But however best they learn, whatever their medium of choice is, be it podcast, YouTube, Instagram, like we got it all. We have a blog, I got books, I mean, there's so many types of resources that are available for free or very cheap on our site. Like we have courses that are fairly low cost. I mean, whatever way they want to learn, I promise I have something for them that fills that, like that learning, that way that they want to learn. I have it somewhere on the site.
Or is there any partnership between Dementia by Day and, the Alzheimer's Society of the United States or whatever it's called down that way?
No, the Alzheimer's Association is the main one. And no, because they have their own thing they do. And my experience has been that some organizations don't want to pay speakers and don't want to like bring in outside counsel, for anything. And at this point in my career, in my life, I do not work for free. I do not work for referrals. I do not work for exposure. People have fortunately stopped mostly pitching me to work for exposure. I hate when people ask me to work for exposure, which is just key for, we are not going to pay you. Can you please do this thing anyway? So no, because I'll come out and work with any organization who actually wants to pay for our time. And so if an organization doesn't want to pay, we ain't going.
I mean, there is the old adage that if it's free, you don't value as much as something you paid
100%.
$5, even $5 for, right?
100%. Yes. Early in my career, I did a lot of junk for free because I was like, I need to get this exposure. I need people to like see that, and it'll turn into more work. And it never turned into work, because when things are free, people don't care about them. And so if you're giving stuff away for free, your work inherently is devalued, because people are like, oh, well, if she's giving this away for free, like it can't possibly be that good. I've also found that when we've been like pitched things that people don't want to pay a lot for, those are the same prospective clients who want everything. Like they want so much for very little. And on the flip side, the people who are paying more, like our 12-month program is $82,000. The companies who have not batted an eyelash at that number are some of our best clients, because They're like, they value us and they value our time, and they're not going to make a bunch of like crazy little requests, and we can develop a really positive working relationship. And so when you have clients who are like, we only have $5,000 and we want this, you know right away it's going to be bad. It's not going to be a good working relationship because they don't understand the value of your time, and they're not going to. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you. So now we're going to get into a segment that I call Lightning Round. So we're going to ask you some questions, and I want you to answer the questions, quickly within a sentence. Don't think about them. Just a short, sweet answer. So, sound good? All right. So, one dementia myth you wish would disappear tomorrow.
Oh my God, that people with dementia can't have knives, butter knives or scissors. Like, put butter knives on the table. So weird. So weird. Yeah.
Favorite go-to phrase when redirecting someone with dementia, if you're doing that?
Well, of course, I always say embracing their reality. So it depends what their reality is.
Most underrated skill every caregiver should learn.
How to embrace somebody's reality.
One thing care communities should stop doing immediately.
Putting up dumb stuff on the walls, like sensory wall stuff, sensory bin stuff. Stop with the sensory stuff. Yeah.
One thing care communities should start doing immediately.
I love baby dolls that look realistic but aren't creepy realistic, and pets that look realistic but aren't creepy realistic.
Your favorite activity that you had the folks do at Agreeing to Remember.
So that would take a little longer to explain. So I will say, as a dementia care director, my favorite activity was taking my residents to read to children, to read to preschool kids.
Which of your books was the hardest to write and why?
I mean, probably my first book, because I didn't know what I was doing. Like, I didn't know. I was like I thought I was halfway done with the book, and I was not halfway done with the book. I was like a quarter of the way there and was like, oops, I'm going to need like a lot more words.
How many pages was the first book on Microsoft Word?
I don't remember how many pages it was, but I know it had to be 75,000 words. And I thought I was halfway done, and I looked at my word count and it was 25,000. And I was like, well, 25,000 is not half of 75. So I'm going to have to go back to my outline and look at this a little harder.
Your most memorable consulting moment in a care home?
Oh my God. I think really the times, because I've taken my mom works for Dementia By Day. So the first time I took my mom like into work with me and actually like watched her apply everything she's learned. And Natalie, who is my director of education, same thing with her, like watching them apply and succeed with everything that I was teaching them was really cool.
What is one small habit that makes the biggest difference for overwhelmed caregivers?
Taking some deep breaths and recognizing that the person is not doing the thing to annoy you. It's just where they are.
What should caregivers forgive themselves for more often?
Sort of ironically, like forgiving themselves for feeling guilty, like forgiving themselves for another feeling, right? So I think that there's a lot of guilt that they have. Like, I should have done this. Shouldn't have done this. And just going, you know what? I know better now. I'll do better now. And also forgiving themselves for taking literally any time to do anything that's not being a caregiver.
If caregivers could master one communication skill, what would it be?
You know what I'm gonna say. I'm gonna embracing their reality.
Would you say you're a morning person or a night person?
I'm a morning person. Yes.
What's
I'm
one
tired
thing
by
that
3.
instantly, sorry?
I'm tired by like 4 p.m. I'm like, I'm over it.
I mean, that's what happens when you have kids, right?
Yeah.
They wake you up early. What's one thing that instantly brings you joy on a hard day?
My son, when he's in a good mood.
What dementia care innovation are you most excited about right now?
Boy, we met a guy on Reddit, of all places, and he invented a website called Shopazon, which looks like Amazon, and you can quote unquote, you can like buy stuff, but you don't actually have to spend any money. So it's like for people living with dementia who want to go online shopping, but you're afraid to give them a credit card because you don't want them to spend a bunch of money, they can shop on this website and add things to their cart. So it's really cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
And is there any notification like caregivers, hey, this is what they want?
No,
Does it
but
do that?
that would be a cool thing to add. But it's just like it looks like Amazon. Like you can like shop. I don't know how he's like a coding, website genius, but yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
If you could deliver one message to every caregiver in the world, what would it be?
And what would it be? Give yourself a break and enlist help early, earlier than you think that you need it, even if you think you're not burned out looking for help.
That's fair because it is a lonely, difficult, and cumbersome journey. Well, Rachel, that's what we have for today. So thank you so much
Thanks.
for joining us. It was a pleasure hearing
Yeah.
your stories, experiences, and I know that the listeners are going to take quite a bit of insights away. So I just want to thank you again for joining us. To our listeners, thank you for being here. If the connection resonated with you, make sure to follow the Dementia Collective wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to share this episode with someone who you think might benefit. And if you'd like to help us grow this movement, please consider becoming a member of the Village on Patreon. Among the benefits, you'll gain early access to all episodes. You'll be able to submit a question like we had earlier for our guests, plus the satisfaction of helping powerful voices like Rachel's reach more caregivers around the world. Finally, if you're on your own caregiving journey, remember, you are not alone. We're here at BlueBell to help connect you with the supports and resources that truly fit your family's needs. Until next time, you are strong, you are not alone, and you are doing something that matters more than you know. Thank you.